gonna go ahead and get started with the math section. I'm gonna go over some of the math problems I know that are on the state exam, and then I'll just kind of open it up if there's any particular math problems you guys may be struggling with, okay? So what I'm gonna start with is commissions. I'm gonna do it the simple way, the way you learned it in school first, and then I'll show you how they're asking for it on the state exam. All right, so you'll get a scenario where home sells for, let's say, $515,000. Total commission is 6%. Usually they'll say it's split 50-50. Keep this in mind, the term co-op broker is the broker cooperating with the listing, so it'd be the buyer's agent, all right? So if you see the term co-op broker, it is the buyer's agent. In this case, the split is 70%, let's say, and the 6% is being split 50-50, right? So we would simply get the 515. We would multiply it by 3%, right? Because they told us it's split 50-50. You can go 6% and divide by 2 or multiply by 50. But offhand, the quickest way would be is just to get 3. And that's going to give us $15,450. And if this agent's at a 70% split and they want to know how much the agent made, it would be $10,815. All right, real simple math. Now, they unfortunately don't make it this simple for you on the state exam. This is what they do, right? So I'm going to erase the 515 up here. And I'm going to replace it with the $10,815. So you'll get a question along the lines as a real estate associate listed a home and made $10,815. It was a 6% commission split, 50-50, with a listing agent, cooperating broker, whatever it is that they decide to say, and the associates at a 70% split. How much did the house sell for? All right, so that's pretty much what they tell you. So it's about working this backwards, right? So if we went down the ladder by multiplying, if we're gonna work our way up, we do the opposite. So this is how I would set it up. The house price is going to be X, right? X is algebraic equation for, this is what we need to find. Times 3% equals X times 70% equals $10,815. So I can't stress enough the importance of memorizing the actual formulas, right? House price times total commission equals brokerage commission times split equals the agent commission. Now I can solve this by going up the ladder by dividing. So I would get my 10,815, and I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication by dividing, right? Opposite of multiplication is division, opposite of addition is subtraction. So 10,815,000 divided by 70% is going to give me the 15,450, right? And if I get the 15,450 and divide it by 3%, it's going to give me the sales price of the home. Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to do one more from scratch, okay? Agent made $12,000. $820. The total commission was 5%, split 50-50, and this agent is at a 60% split. How much did the home sell for? Right? So I'm going to lay out my formula again. It's memorizing the formula. X times 2.5%, right? 50-50 split equals X times 60% equals 12,820. All right? So now I get what? 12,820 and divide by 60%. Which in this case, I'm inventing these numbers off the top of my head, is going to be $21,366.67. Rounded, right? Now I get that number and I do the opposite as I'm going up the ladder, right? And I divide by 2.5%. The house sold for $854,666.64. Everybody see that? It's about memorizing the formula. Sales price times total commission equals X. Times the split equals how much the agent made. If you got to go backwards, now you just divide it. This is how they ask it for me. They don't make it easy where they give you the sales price of the home. They tell you how much the agent made. They expect you to know this formula forward as you learned it in the class, but now they're testing you on doing it backwards. All right? So another one I know is on the state exam is documentary stamp tax on the deed. Let's do it the easy way, and then I'll show you how they look for it. So we learned in the class that the seller pays outside of Miami-Dade County. That's why they give you a county and they never give you Miami-Dade. That it's 70 cents per $100. Okay? So 70 cents per 100 is what the seller pays. Now we can find this 70 cents two ways, right? If the sales price of the home ends with 2 zeros, we can simply multiply by 0.007. Okay? Why can't we do that when the home doesn't end with the sales price doesn't end with 2 zeros? Does that anybody know? Because I know there's a school not far from here. The guy teaches you 007 and James Bond, and that's not always factual. Okay? I want you to be aware of that if you went to that school. 007 is not always factual. I'm going to tell you why. Because they charge 70 cents per $100 or a fraction thereof. So if the house sold, and they'll do this the short way, and they'll present it on the exam the short way this way. The house sold for $110, right? So let's just use that example. $500,110. The correct way of doing it is dividing it by 100, 70 cents per $100. What does that give you? 5,001.1, right? Here's the thing, is these are called documentary stamp taxes on the deed, right? They don't tax you on a partial stamp, right? Back in the day, they would actually give you the stamps on turn for the money. This is how it's done. It's not done that way anymore, where there's actual tangible stamps that they give you. But since you get 5,001.1, you need to round up. Even though it's 0.1, what we learned in elementary school, that in this case we would round down, no. In this case, government gets the benefit of the doubt, and they're taxing you now based on 5,002 stamps. Everybody good with that? Do now multiply by 0.007 unless the sales price ends with 2 zeros. In this case it doesn't, it ends with 1 zero. And here we would simply get the 70 cents, and in this case this person paid as a result of the sale of their home, $3,501.40. Everybody good with that? So, mortgages are taxed similar, but the tax rate is exactly half of what the seller pays. Buyers pay on their mortgage, on all of their mortgages, 35 cents per $100. And if the mortgage happens to be new, they also charge what's known as an intangible tax on the mortgage, and that's subject to 0.002, 2 mils. And in that case, you never divide, you straight multiply the new mortgage times 2 mils. We'll talk about mills now in a minute too. When it comes to property taxes, if you speak Spanish, it may be easier for you. 1,000, you just divide 2 by 1,000 and it'll give you 0.002. So if you're being taxed 7.3 mils, for example, on property taxes, get the 7.3 and divide them by 1,000. And it'll give you 0.0073. Okay? Now, let me work this the way that they want you to do it on the state. And I want you to understand the following. Here I did this. I divided by 100 and I multiplied by 0.70. When they ask you to find it backwards, in this case 007 works fine. Because that human touch of rounding up is impossible for them to have you do that, right? So in this case, when you're finding it backwards, you can in fact use 007. Which is the same as this, for the exception of the rounding up, giving the government the benefit of the doubt, right? To make it a total full stamp. Everybody with me on that explanation? So I'm going to go ahead and erase this here, and we're going to find it backwards. A home seller sold his house in Columbia County, Florida, and paid $4,820 in dock stamps. How much did the house sell for? You'll see that question on the state exam, right? So in this case, I can go X times 007 equals 4,820. How do I find X? I'm going up the ladder. I do the opposite. I divide by 0.007, and in this case, the house sold for $688,571.42. Everybody good with that? When finding it backwards, you can just simply divide by 0.007, or you could do it by 0.007 as long as the sales price ends in 00. If not, if the sales price does not end in 00, and you're doing it from the sales price to find how much they paid, then you divide by 100, and you round up no matter what. If there's a decimal and a 0.1 after that, you still go up. They taxed these again on stamps back in the day. They would give you the full stamp. They would not tear a tenth off of it and say you owe them, 7 cents. All right, I'm going to do one more as it relates to this, and I've heard this question's on there, which kind of brings a mortgage math from chapter 12 with chapter 14. A borrower paid $700 in dock stamps for his mortgage. Okay? And a seller paid $1,750 in dock stamps to the state. Okay? Now I'm not writing it all up here, just kind of write this down maybe as I go along. And the question is, what is the LTV? We have enough information to find our LTV. Loan to value ratio, right? I can find the sales price based on what the seller paid, and I can find the mortgage based on what the borrower paid, right? And what's my loan to value formula? Loan into value. Loan divided by value. So let's find the loan, let's find the value and divide it. So X times 0.0035 equals 700, and X times 0.007 equals 1750. Everybody with me?
Where's the 0.0035 from? I'm sorry.
35 cents per $100 on mortgages. Remember, the borrower pays half of what the seller pays. So 1750 divided by 0.007 tells me that the sales price of the home was $250K. 700 divided by 0.0035 tells me that the loan was for $200K. 200,000 divided by 250,000 gives me, on my calculator, 0.8, right? What does 0.8 signify to you? 80%. So we have an 80% loan to value under this particular situation. So it brings in chapter 14 and puts it together with chapter 12, which are our loan to value formula. Everybody good? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about loan to value, go into discount points. Another question on the state exam is a home. All right, let me put the details up here. Home sold for $280,000. The LTV expressed in a percentage is 80%. The borrower paid 2 points. The question is always, what is the dollar amount of the points charged? When they ask you the dollar amount, you want to know how much they paid. Well, how are points charged? On the loan amount, right? So now I need to find the loan amount because I only have the sold, which is the purchase price, and I have my 80%. So if loan into value equals 80%, so it's going to be X divided by 280 equals 80%. How do I find X? I multiply in this case, right? Because if my numbers are to the right of the division, I multiply. If I had the loan and was missing one of the other two, I would have to divide, because the division is going to be between me and the other number, right? Or between the loan and the other numbers. Because I have students that come with this. Well, how do I find the x? Do I multiply? Do I divide? Another cheat, and I'll just show you quick. Some students get more confused, but if that's the case, don't worry. I'll usually just use, to make it quicker, just a division that jives, right? That goes together. So I know if 32 divided by 8 equals 4, and I place these numbers directly below my numbers here, then I know that 8 times 4 would give me my x, right? If you said, don't worry about it. If you had it before, you had it before, right? If the division is not in the way, you multiply. If you're on to the left of it, then you would divide, right? So meanwhile, I'm going to find my loan amount. In this case, it's 280 times 80% gives me 224,000. How do I calculate the points? What does the points mean to you?
It's 8 percentage.
No, not the 8. That's APR. That's next. What do the points mean to you? Well, I tell you what it means to the loan officer. That's his commission. And it's expressed in a percentage. 2% in this case. So we get our 224 and we multiply by 2%. 224 times 2% is $4,480. What if the scenario asked you, borrower paid $4,480 in points and was charged 2 points? What was the loan amount? Could you find that? If they didn't give us the 224, sure, we could. We would get the 4,480 and divide it by 2%. It would give us the loan amount, right? We'd go backwards. So if you have like the Dearborn book, Appendix D is it? Gives you all of the formulas and words. Trust me, if you're not good with numbers, if you memorize it, it's all about knowing when to hit multiplication. And if you got to find it backwards, you hit division. If you're not good with numbers, just memorize the formulas and apply them backwards or forwards, depending on the question. Any questions on this? Go ahead.
So each point is 1%?
Each point is 1%. So if they charge 3 points, we'd be multiplying by 3%. All right, and they're going to ask you here, what is the dollar amount of the points charged? There's another question, right, that is relative to the points. And let's just use this example. The interest rate on the loan was 5%. What is the APR? Is the question. It may give you all of this. They'll give you sometimes numbers you don't need, right? So we need to know when to use certain numbers. So they give me this whole scenario. They tell me the interest rate is 5% and that he was charged 2 points. And then they ask me, what is the APR? What are we going to do? Anybody know?
Divide the sales price with the commission?
5% plus 2 over 8 equals my APR. Rule of thumb is for every point charged, it increases the interest rate by 1/8 of 1%. In this case, they charged me 2 points. So it would be 5 1/4 is my APR. Okay? Now, what if they charge 3 points? What would be my APR? 3 over 8. If I divide 3 into 8, right, that's what 2a signifies, is 2 divided into 8 gives me 0.25, right? So if they charge me 3 points, let me just turn this into a 3, and I divide 3 into 8, it's 0.375, then my APR is 5.375. So simply get the interest rate that they charged you, right? The interest rate, the contract interest rate, and whatever numbers, whatever amount of points they charged you, put it over the number 8 and add them together. You will see APR on the test. There's not many math questions that come out of chapter 12 and 13. Well, there's a few, but this is one you can guarantee to see. It's pretty easy. I see some really confused looks though. I don't know why. And you don't want to ask questions. You want to go home with that face. That's fine. But this is the whole point of coming here today was to learn this, right? So if this is not clear now, it's a good time to ask.
Can you do one more of those?
Sure, we'll do another one. So we'll leave all the other numbers out. I can see how maybe that's what's confusing you, and just make it nice and simple. Now, I wish they did it on the state exam that way, because they will give you a lot of other numbers you don't need. And you need to pull the ones you do. But I'm gonna make it simple. So the interest rate, contract interest rate is 4.375. They charged 5 points. What is the APR? $4.375 plus what? 5/8 equals my APR, right? So 5 divided by 8 gives me 0.625. Now 4.375 plus 0.625 gives me an APR of 5%, nice and round. This is pretty easy, I think. So dollar amount, percentage, right? You get those points, turn them into a percentage, you multiply it by the loan balance, by the mortgage balance. If they ask for the APR, you get the interest rate, the contract rate, and add it to the points over 8. That's it.
So again, you did 5.5/8 and you added the 0.625
To the 4.375, yeah.
to the 4, so you added it all, okay.
So 4.375 plus 0.625 would give you 5%, right?
Okay, yes. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, anybody want to do a pip sandwich? No, I don't teach it that way. That's ridiculous, actually. I'll teach it to you hopefully a lot easier way for you to understand it. It's actually a lot easier than that. And I want to start under the premises of the following, because this actual formula, you might see it twice. You might see it when you're prorating a assumable mortgage, right? There's an example on the state exam that this is the loan balance, we're closing on such date, and what is the proration? But let's start with amortizing a mortgage, and I want you to understand the following. That when you amortize a mortgage or not, right? In order to find annual interest, it's this easy. You get the mortgage balance and you multiply it by the interest rate. Mortgage balance times interest rate equals annual interest. Okay? That's how you find your annual interest. Now let me pull together a scenario and we'll do the math. Go ahead.
Does the math section come at a specific point in the testing before or after, or is it just?
At the end, the last 10.
Okay.
However, I'm going to tell you the following, is throughout the test, they will ask you questions that relate to math that are not with numbers. For example, like, what is the intangible tax on new mortgages? And you're going to pick 2 mils, right? So they'll ask you things along those lines. So skipping the math, for those of you that have that planned in your head, not a good idea. That's going to make or break. If you skip the math, you're going to be going and you know your other stuff really well, you're going to be the one that's getting the 72, the 73, and the 74. All right, so you'll see a scenario like this. mortgage balance is 280,000. The interest rate is 5%, and my monthly payment is $13.93. These are the three things you need in order to be able to solve this problem. They may give you more. What they usually give you that's more is the 30 years. They'll tell you it's 30 years. 30 years is irrelevant. Okay? What went towards principal the second month? They never ask you the first, right? They ask you to arrive at it the second month. So, this is my formula and how I suggest you do it. And just fill in the blanks. Remember to lay it out this way. All right, so mortgage balance times interest rate gives me my annual interest. And if I divide my annual interest by 12, it gives me my monthly interest. And the number that comes below that is how much I sent towards principal, the difference, right? So I suggest you remember just do it like this and then plug in the numbers. In this case, all I'm missing is 3 numbers to arrive at how much I paid in the first month. 280 times 5% gives me 14,000. $14,000 divided by 12, $1,166.67. I simply subtract that number from my payment, which is a constant, and it gives me $226.71. Right? The number at the bottom represents what I sent towards principal. The number on top is what I paid in interest, right? They asked me for the second month. So what's my next step? Nobody here a Pip Sandwich Master? No. We do it all over, right? Do we start at 280? No. We get the 280 minus what number? And what's this number going to represent? My new balance, right? In this case, it's 279,773.29. So I'm just, for the sake of I'm going to erase the first month and do it again. So 279,773.29 times 5%. My 5% is a constant, right? My balance is what changes. What's also a constant is my monthly payment. So 279,773.29 times 5% gives me $13,988.66. If I get 13,988.66 and divide by 12, it gives me $1,165.72. So how much did I pay my second month? $227.66. In the Pip Sandwich, yeah, I think so at least. Yeah, there's so many brackets, this and that going on. It's Mortgage balance times interest rate is your annual interest. If you need to divide by 12, you divide by 12, right, to find the monthly interest. So we're going to practice this one more time in a different scenario you may see on the state exam. And that is prorations on an assumed mortgage, all right? So you'll get something along the lines as follows. Mortgage balance is $160,000. The mortgage is being assumed by the buyer. The closing date is June 9th. What are the prorations? You're going to get something like that, right? So they got to give you the interest rate as well. And we'll say the interest rate is 4.5%. How do mortgages work? They're paid in arrears just like taxes, right? You live the mortgage and then you pay it. So in this case, June's mortgage is going to be due on July 1st. All right? We have to default to the old rule unless they tell us otherwise, that day of closing belongs to the buyer. Right? So the buyer is responsible now that he's assuming this mortgage to pay for it from the 9th to June 30th. So the seller is going to leave some money on the table at closing for the 8 days that he lived in June, right? When there's a closing though, short of breaking a penny in half, the money's going to get directed to where it has to go. So the seller needs to give a credit to the buyer for 8 days. How do we calculate those 8 days? First off, how do we find their annual interest? All right, so we get 160 times 4.5%, right? That's $7,200 a year. What's my next step? No? Anybody got something different? Find the day. Divide by 365. So that we find the daily rate, right? We're looking to calculate 8 days. So we need to find the daily rate. And in this case, our daily rate is $19.73, right? Times 8 days. And it's somewhere around $157.81. How does this show on the closing statement? Debit to the seller, credit to the buyer. All right, let's talk about that a little bit because those are some of the non-math questions you might see, right? So if it's going from buyer to seller or seller to buyer, it's going to be debit the seller, credit the buyer, if they're paying each other, right? Because I know there's a question on the state exam that, how does the documentary stamp tax on the deed show on the closing statement? How does that show? Is the seller paying his doc stamps to the buyer? No, he's paying it to the state of Florida. The state of Florida is not part of the transaction. So what are you going to choose there? Debit seller only. All right? So look at where the money's going. If it's going from one party to the other, then it's going to be debit one, credit the other. If it's not and it's going outside of closing, then it would be just a debit or a credit to one of them. For example, how does the commission typically show on the closing statement? Debit seller only, right? The seller's paying the commission to the broker. Might be part of the transaction, but it's not the buyer, right? So if it's outside of buyer or seller, then it's going to be just a debit to one of them. Any questions on amortizing a mortgage, the proration? Everybody good with that explanation? let's just do one more quick proration, and let's do property taxes. That one shows up the easy way and the hard way. Taxes on the year are $3,811. Closing is on August 12th. What's the proration? Well, we know here, in case we forget how to even do this, that we can default to a 50-50 guess if we remember that taxes are paid in arrears, so meaning the seller's got to leave the buyer the money. So this is going to be a debit the seller, credit the buyer. Your two choices are going to be off by a day because they're going to figure that you forgot that the day of closing belongs to the buyer. That's how this test is catered. You can get rid of 50-50 and at least throw a guess at debit by picking debit the seller. If you forget that it's debit the seller, then it's not a 50-50 guess.
Was it coming about the 1 day?
The 1 day, remember, day of closing belongs to the buyer, so the buyer's paying the taxes as of August 12th. We need to figure out how many days we have until August 11th that the seller is going to give a credit to the buyer from that day on. All right, so at least I remember from elementary school I was taught how many days in a month with my knuckles, right? So the top of your knuckle, 31, right? So I got January with 31. It's not a leap year, so February is 28. March, 31. April, 30. May, 31. June, 30. July, 31. And August, 11. And August has 31 days, actually. That's the whole knuckle trick. July and August both have 31 days. So don't forget that one. We got 11 days in August. So I find out how many days I have in total, which is 31 plus 28 plus 31 plus 30 plus 31 plus, okay, well now I lost where I was at. 31 plus 28 plus 31 plus 30 plus 31 plus 30 plus 31 plus 11. 223 days, right? So I have a total of 223. So what do I do next?
3811 divided by 365.
Good. 3,811 divided by 365 is going to tell me how much the taxes are on a daily basis, right? In this case, it's going to be $10.44. Well, I'm going to leave this here because at 223 days, that rounding may throw me off, right? Which is $2,328.36. Which is debit to the buyer, credit to the seller? No. Debit the seller, credit the buyer. Everybody good with that?
Where did you start the 223 days? Did you start with?
The 223 days?
Was the end of the year? Or you start with? Yeah.
Oh, it's January 1st?
Oh, January.
Yeah, it's calendar years. So you live 2018 taxes, they were due as of March 1st, 2019. Okay? All right, so now